that scary last night? Or just annoying, constant being moved on?
We only got moved on the once, and we just went down to Botanical Gardens where we knew we wouldn't get moved on, but then sprinklers started, you know. And
we better get going on this video because we got. Just check if Stephen's coming in.
Good morning, everyone. Bo here from Nourish Street, Paul from Northwest Community, and we've got Megan here from Alliance. Tiegen, sorry, my bad.
Alliance Disability Support.
Alliance Disability Support. So, tell us a little bit about what you do and how it sort of ties in with how you met Paul and.
Sure.
All right.
So my business is a disability support and aged care, but I originally met Paul because my brother was homeless at the time. He was living in Musgrave Park. We were trying to get help and do everything. And the lovely Paul, I don't even know how I found out about you. I think it was dinners. My brother was going to get dinners from Paul at the start.
Yeah, I can't even remember, and I think that we connected for other things as well. And then I was like, oh yeah, you're his sister. I was like, wow.
And then I realised what you do for your day job, because this is not all you do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I work in the NDIS space for the software company that I work for. Yeah. So, which do you use it?
Yes.
Yeah. So, small world for sure.
But. No, so a lot of Paul will ask me to help his friends who have a disability or are elderly, and we try and get them onto the platform. But it's not easy, it's very difficult. The first experience was obviously with my brother and trying to work out the complexities. Everyone works in silos, there's no multi-teams working together and trying to get a person here or a person there, and a lot of the organisations are great, but they don't work with everyone. So you've got the homeless outreach team, but then they won't work with the NDIS provider. They'll provide the person with instructions or directions, but as easy as those directions are, they're not easy for someone who is homeless or has a disability or is aged and they don't have transport, they don't have money, they don't have reliable phones.
Yeah, I think we see a fair bit of overlap in NDIS and homelessness. I guess for people that don't know, that might be watching and don't even know what the NDIS is, do you want to give a brief explanation of what the NDIS is and what you're supposed to get from the NDIS? Like what do they cover, what don't they cover, that kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm. So the NDIS is the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and it is for anybody who has a permanent disability. So whether it's a physical disability, an intellectual disability, or a psychosocial disability, so mental illness, they're all covered. It does have to be a diagnosed disability, so you do need to have a specialist report on that to confirm. So psychiatrists, GPs, anything. So that's your first step. Then you have to complete the application form, get that sent through. But to do that, you need to have all of your ID. So you've got to have a license or a proof of age card, a Medicare card, your birth certificate, and generally you need something with your address on it, which is impossible at times. Once you've done that process, you submit your application, you've had everything signed off at the report, then it'll go to NDIA for them to assess whether or not you fall within the guidelines. If you fall within the guidelines, then they go to a plan, it's like a plan creator or a plan manager, where they work out what supports you will need. You can't say this is what I would like or this is what's going to help me. It's basically a checklist. So depending on your disability, if it's a physical disability, they may assist you to go through physio or a physio exercise physiologist. They may help you go to like some sort of rehab so that you're learning how to reuse your muscles. If it's an intellectual thing, then there's all different programs you can go through, but not everyone with the same disability will end up with the same plan or the same amount of funding. That's determined by functional capacity assessments, which you've got to pay for. So all of this, and this is where it gets too hard because there's no funding. And who's got a couple of $1,000 to go and see a psychiatrist or go and get a functional capacity assessment done, because they're not going to pay for it until you've got your NDIS. Or they're not going to pay for it until you're approved for your aged care.
Yeah. So when we talk aged care, are we talking elderly, or is aged care is it over a particular age?
So if you are a non-Indigenous, you have to be 65 to apply.
Yeah.
If you are an Indigenous person, you can apply from the age of 55.
Right. When we talk about addiction, and addiction being mental health, is that something that NDIS touches on, or is that something totally different?
Absolutely. So addiction is obviously the result of your mental health. So whether it be trauma, whether you've got depression, whether you've got schizophrenia, bipolar, there's all sorts of different things, and the addiction is the result of those mental health issues. So whilst they won't cover you, you can't go in and say I'm an alcoholic and NDIS will cover you. But if you can be diagnosed that you have severe depression or that you have borderline personality disorder or anything like that, they will. If they cannot find that you have a disability, which is a lifelong disability, alcoholism on its own is not covered, or drug addiction for any other substance is not covered. But if they can prove that you've got underlying factors like bipolar, schizophrenia, anything like that, then you can be covered.
So if it was something like, with a lot of people that experience addiction, and we talk about childhood trauma, how do you get that diagnosed?
It's very hard, and it's also very hard for the person to have to go back down through what's happened.
Yeah.
But that's where we have to have a psychiatrist, and the person has to be willing to relive that trauma, which is unfortunate, but that's the only way that they can get there to make a diagnosis, because post-traumatic stress disorder is covered. It's huge. But again, a lot of people aren't prepared to revisit that life.
I think though, if you're looking to go down for the, maybe as a pathway for rehabilitation, then it's something that you're going to probably need to relive anyway if you're going to start talking about traumas and addiction and what got you into that and all that.
It's very hard too, because through the application process, if they determine that it's a medical issue, then you have to go through the health system.
Right.
They won't help you. So anything on NDIS has to be a permanent disability, and whether it's a medical or a disability, that's where the fine line is, because it's...
So from the outside looking in, is the NDIS a really complex system to work with?
Extremely complicated, and the goalposts change all the time. You can have an NDIS plan and then it will roll over and you'll lose all of your funding even though your disability's not changed. You can have two people exactly the same, one gets approved and one doesn't. So the goalposts are constantly changing. Every single person you speak to will give you a different answer. Even if you ring the head office or the helplines, you speak to 3 different people, you will get 3 different answers. So I try and say to everyone, look, as long as we are being honest and doing the best that we can for the participant, if we get it wrong, that's fine and we'll be told. But I try and help people to make sure that we're getting the best help for them. And if along the way we're told that it's wrong, well, it's wrong. But even your codes, to get your invoice page, you've got to have the right code, you've got to have the right day, It's a great program once you're on it and once things are settled, but initially it is so complex. And then even once you get approved, you've got to find someone that you want to work with, someone that you trust, someone that's available on the days that you want, because it is all about the person on NDIS, which they're called participants. So, it's great to be approved, but then you're finding people, and they're frauds. There's people who are in it for the money, and I don't know why they say you're in it for the money, because you honestly don't make a lot of money unless you're frauding the system, because by the time you're paying your wages, your super, your insurances, everything else, there's not a lot of money. But people are in it for the wrong reasons. They're in it, they're charging when they're not there for the participant. The participant may feel threatened, so they don't say anything. Then that just creates a whole other trauma for the participant.
So when I asked before about like what's covered and what's not covered, so housing isn't covered in the NDIS?
Housing can be covered. You've got different forms. You've got short-term accommodation, which is, say, if your house flooded and you needed somewhere quickly to stay. You've got medium-term accommodation, which is somewhere that it's more than 6 weeks. Or you can correct me on that, but you get the idea. Short-term's like a week, a night. You've got medium-term accommodation. Then you've got specialist disability accommodation, which is paid through your NDIS, because investors buy the house, then they lease it to a disability support service, so like a lease. Then the provider fits the house out, and through their plan, they charge the participant. So the participant pays, I think it's $192.50 a week in rent, and the rest is paid through their funding. So they do and they don't cover the housing. You've still got to pay rent, but you've also got independent living options where you can go and rent a room, you pay rent, but the support workers in the house are helping you. So you don't get to choose your support workers because they're already in the house.
Yeah.
So there are ways, and again, this is what I say, there's so many different options. You've got different levels, like some homes, some of our clients have just themselves in the home. You've got other homes where there's 2 people in the homes, 3 people in the homes. So it can be covered in as such, but there's always support that goes with it. You can't just go and get a house for free.
Yeah. You spoke about how we met, which was, through your brother and also through some other work and just through Facebook and all that kind of stuff. Did you want to touch on the struggles that you had in getting help for your brother, or the system, and how, because I can remember, and it's been a year or so now, but I can remember that you were just so livid at the time, or we both were, at what he was going through and the lack of support that he was getting, and it just felt like jail was the only thing that was gonna, and then inevitably that's what happens, right, for a period as well. And it's like I'll let you talk to it, but
that's a sad thing. Everyone says the last thing you ever want is to put someone in jail. I was begging for my brother to be put in jail because there was nowhere else for him to go. There were days where I'd just cry because a lot of our friends that are homeless are sick, they've got injuries, they go to the hospital, and they are called the High Flyers Club. I know that's disgusting that even they're treated that way, but if you're homeless, you are discriminated against at the hospitals because, let's say you're on drugs, so they dismiss you because you're on drugs and say, no, come back when you're sober. But they're on drugs to numb the pain of what's going on. They're constantly being rejected from places. Like my brother would go to hospital. He would, the amount of times he tried to kill himself was incredible. And he'd go to the hospital, he would tell them, I'm unwell, I need help, I want to be admitted. And they wouldn't admit him because they'd say, no, you're a drug addict, you're on drugs, you're not sober. They never blood tested him. So there were times where he was not on drugs. He was just hallucinating, doing different things. I rang every single local politician, parliament, And every single one of them said, that's not our area of expertise. I rang the homeless outreach team. And they'd say, we've spoken to Nathan, we've given him directions, he's not followed those directions, so we can't help him. And this is where I say, when you have no phone, your things are getting stolen, you don't have a watch to remind you what time it is, you're getting hauled by the police because you're in a public area. Like Nathan wasn't an angel. He did things that he shouldn't do, and he was well known. But when you start jumping out in front of cars and taking whatever drugs you can to numb the pain, that's where it's sad. And you're going to the hospital thinking that's the place that you're going to get help, and you don't. And that's where both my mum and I, we just broke down because there was nowhere to get my brother help. He wanted to get help. He wanted to, you would know, they are such beautiful people in their personalities, but they are so lost. They are violent, they are confused, they are sad, they're angry. But as soon as you allow them to decompress and unravel, they come back to themselves. But there was no one would help us. And it got to the point where we were glad that Nathan finally went to jail.
Yeah, and I remember that, and I had to go through his tent and try and find his paperwork, and like there was no support at all from anyone.
He lost all his belongings in the storage sheds because he couldn't pay, and then he would get there and he was upset. And that's the thing, you can't keep anything. The minute you leave your tent, whatever's there gets stolen. So everyone tries to put things into a storage unit, and then you lose that because you can't pay for it, because you're living on the streets. Everyone says, oh, if you're lucky enough and you get the dole or a disability payment, that doesn't last long because you can't keep cold milk. You can't keep anything cold, so you're constantly having to buy food. You can't buy a lot of food because then it gets stolen. So it's just, it's horrible.
Yeah, we talk about that. It's not cheap being homeless, that's for sure. People think that that's why they do it, right? Is to like not have to pay rent, and they're living the high life. But in reality, it is expensive and it's stressful, and you've got no fridge. You've got to constantly work out where you're going to get your next meal from.
But even just his self-worth. Like Nathan is such a clean person, full of hygiene, and there were nights where he was sleeping in toilets to feel safe, and no one would ever want to be homeless on purpose.
And his mental health, like the fact that he wasn't getting support for that always boggled my mind. I think there was one particular time where I put him in a tent at Musgrave Park, and when I came the next morning, he'd barricaded the whole toilet block up at Musgrave Park. So he'd pulled temporary fencing from somewhere else in the park and completely encircled the whole toilet block because he said that there was a needle. He hated. He was a real hygiene. Everywhere I put him, he was checking loose wires. For near the tent and stuff. And for me, it was so obvious that he was struggling with some issues there, but he just wouldn't get any help from anyone for it. And I had to pull that fencing down. And but he was such a lovely guy when he was okay. Like you could see the real him there. And how's he doing at the moment?
He's amazing. He's got a home. He's not touched drugs at all.
Really?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Not at all. He gets to come and see my kids, which he loves. He doesn't get to see his kids one day at a time, but he's back to himself. He rings his grandma every day, he rings his mum every day.
That's
he
amazing.
wants to be able to give back, but obviously he's still coping with the whole being in a house, having to be considerate, and that not everyone has the same quality.
So how did that happen? What was the catalyst to get him from where he was when he was in my life and I was helping him and everything to where he is now, that he's stable and in housing and doing well?
It's getting him off the drugs. So having a stable accommodation was huge, even though it was jail. It was a psychiatrist in jail that diagnosed him, and they said, there is no doubt about you. You're schizophrenic and have bipolar or borderline personality disorder. So he was wild in jail. He was pulling his cell apart, butting his head against the walls, doing all sorts of things, but that's because he was still coming down off the drugs. And when I'd say to him, what were you having? He'd say, I'd just take anything that I could while I was on the streets. He said it didn't matter what it was as long as I got to go into another world. And so whilst he was in jail and able to see the psychiatrist and deal with some of his demons, when he got out, the support coordinator that I teamed him up with works with a lot of men coming out of prison and getting them back into normal life. And we were lucky to find a housing, it's like a supported independent living. So Nathan rents the room. There's other people there that are also on NDIS, and they've all generally got mental health disabilities. And the person that's in the home is helping them to make sure they stay clean. He'll drug test them if he feels that they're not straight and not sober. And if they do touch drugs, they get 2 warnings and they're out. But if they touch ice or anything like that, they're straight out, because obviously it puts the other participants in the house at risk of using. So I think it's just had that consistency. He was back on his medication, which when you're homeless, you can't get medication because you don't have a fixed address, so they won't give you medication. So it's just been, again, I think, being able to call somewhere home, knowing that you're safe because your stress levels are reduced.
So it's that housing first model that we talk about, you know, we just know, and it doesn't matter whether it's addiction, mental health, trauma, anything, housing first is the answer. And that's why.
You know what I love about you is you don't judge people, and I know that if you've got people in the homes, they may be an alcoholic or they may be using at the time, and you're still helping put them in a home, because once they're stable, then you can start to look at the addictions and try and reduce them. It's not going to happen while they're on the street and they're battling every day.
How can you expect them to deal with those sorts of complex and deep-seated issues while they're just trying to survive? Even just after one night, I'm barely functioning at the moment because I barely had any sleep last night. So I can only imagine doing that for days on days, on weeks on weeks. Yeah. Bo, any questions from you?
There was something I was going to ask. So you said that if these participants get drug tested and they're found to be on ice and they're kicked out, what's that mean for them? Does that mean they're back to square one, back to homelessness?
Yes.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, unfortunately, some places aren't like that, but a lot of them that are with the NDIS, because there's other people in the house that it's at risk, it's tough. And I've had to pick people up from those homes and take them back, bring them back to Musgrave. Remember, we had a couple, and it's hard because they're angry at me, they've got kicked out and everything, but you just have to be honest with them. And that's what I said, you know, this is not my fault. I'm not blaming you, I'm not judging you, but you used and you knew the rules. So now we've got to try and find something else.
Go back to square one, yeah.
I always think
and it's not like we're saying, well, you're done, we're not going to help you anymore.
That's right.
It's that didn't work. And everything has to have rules, and there has to be a line drawn somewhere. And I guess, again, when you've got that shared accommodation, because that's the complexities with that. We think with the housing first model, it's each person has their own accommodation, which means they're less vulnerable to each other. But with the NDIS space and that the model is to be a shared accommodation, that adds that complexity to it.
You can get some accommodation through NDIS where you are on your own. It is very rare and it is very expensive. It's nearly it can be up to $2,000 a week that the funding for that house is covered. And that doesn't include your support workers or anything like that. So The shared living is good, and it depends on the setup. Like if they were taking the house to AA or NA and things like that, it would be great that they're working along that. But it's important for them to understand and know, and I think once they have it and they sort of think, oh, thank God I've finally got a house, they're still battling their addiction, then they get kicked out and they're like, oh, here I am again back here. Sometimes I feel that needs to be felt. And then once they do get somewhere, they really do try. And that's what I say to them. We're not judging you. We're not thinking any less of you, but let's work on the next solution. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes they do end up back on the streets, which is really hard to handle. But not everyone wants to go to rehab. Not everyone. If they don't have Centrelink, they can't go because you've either got government-funded ones or you've got self-funded ones. The self-funded ones are enormously expensive. Yeah. So then we're back to where do we go? And this, I always think, when was it, in the 80s and 90s, we had, what are the buildings where everyone that went to for mental health, if you had mental health, you were put in these things, but they stopped them because people were admitting people, saying, oh, she's crazy, or I can't remember the name of it. It was like a building, and they were basically locked in there, medicated to not do anything.
Asylum.
Similar things. It was like, it was a government-funded place, and you didn't need to prove that you were crazy. It was someone would drop you off and say, oh, my wife's crazy or my husband's crazy, and they'd just be drugged and left there. There needs to be some sort of buildings where it's ran by the government. They know that people going there are going to be battling addictions, and they help work them with that and to put them on the medication and to make sure that they're taking the medication, because I think that would cost far less than, like Nathan, over 20 years, I would hate to think about the cost, and we fought for 20 years, the amount of times he's tried to commit suicide, the amount of times he's been arrested in public for public nuisance, the amount of times he's gone to the hospital, all those sorts of things, and he's one person.
Yeah.
If they had built a building and give everyone different rooms and help them get their lives back on track.
Yeah. Well, that's what we say. The cost to keep people homeless is incredibly high. The resources that are used, from medical to police to services, homeless services, is astronomical. And that it's actually cheaper to build another common ground supported accommodation and actually provide them the supports that they need. And it's a more humane thing to do as well. So it's like, why isn't that happening? It boggles the mind as to why that isn't actually what's happening right now. Why aren't we getting more common grounds and more supported living that works for people? And yeah.
I think people, and I think you would understand this the most, we've got the government agencies that are there for homeless people, but I don't think they actually understand what it's like to have a loved one as an addict or someone that's homeless. And people would say to me all the time, how do you sleep at night knowing that your brother's on the streets? And I was like, well, I've got a family to protect. I'm there for him. I'm helping in the background, but I cannot have him in my home, because if he has an episode, it will affect my kids. It will affect their growing up and their trauma and things like that, which I need to protect them. But you guys are so non-judgmental. It doesn't matter. Like, I know Nathan was horrible to you a couple of times, but you kept showing up and doing everything, whereas a lot of the organisations, if someone was aggressive towards you or if they promised you not to do something and they did it, well, then you're wiped. Whereas you guys just keep showing up. And it would be really nice if these organisations actually went above what they do and say to you, okay, look, I know you're homeless, we've got this appointment, can I come and pick you up? Can I do this to help you get ID? Can I help you to get fixed up or go to the doctors? Or there's just so many more things that they could do, but they tick, go, I've done that, I've done my job, see you later.
Yep.
And then we've got people like you and Bo who've created your own charities to help these people, because we can't do that. So That's where I get really frustrated, that there's so much money paying all of these staff members, and yet you guys have still had to create a charity, and you've done so much more for these people than they've ever had from any other person.
Well, and I think the reason why is because we have people like you that are in our networks that are supporting the people that we're helping. And I know that you're involved in Scott, that we're working with now, and your expertise and guidance in that is going to be crucial as we get through that process, and we may be looking at NDIS and stuff. And I guess that's one question I was going to ask is, why is it that when I see people that are on NDIS funding and nothing's happening and they're homeless and no one's looking after them, and then when I introduce them to you, you're able to get things done almost straight away? Why? What's the reason for that? Why can you do this and not other people?
Other people, I don't know the real reason. The only thing I can think of is either they're intimidated or they're not educated enough to know what happens. I've been through that with my family and with my brother. I understand. I don't just look at them and think, oh, well, no, you deserve to be on the streets or you want to be on the streets. I understand the struggle, so I make it work. That I feel that they need my help, and like I don't charge to help them because they don't have it all. They don't have their plans. And again, that's the thing, they've got to ring up NDIS to get their plan numbers, to get approval for me to speak to them. So a lot of the time we're just making sure that we can get them into a safe place first, and then we will tackle the NDIS. But I guess it's either been that they've abused their last provider and the provider's just said, no, I'm not doing it anymore. Sometimes they're schizophrenic and they just don't know who to call or where to go, and the providers give up on them.
Well, look, yeah, I just want to say thank you to you for everything that you've done for all the people that we support. I think, you say that Bo and I are amazing and all that, but honestly, I think Bo and I both feel that we wouldn't be able to do what we did without people like you and without the volunteers and all the wealth of knowledge on all the systems, because we don't understand the system. We're still trying to juggle through it. So we are an extension of you anyway. So we're only great because you help us. So yeah, really appreciate it.
And I guess just wrapping up, if anyone's got any questions about the NDIS system or about what you do, what's the best way? How do they access this or get involved? Or
Yeah, I'll share my details with Paul and yourself, and they can either contact you and you can send my details on.
Yep.
Otherwise they can contact me on Facebook or anything.
What was the name of your business again?
Alliance Disability Support. So we're on that under Facebook, but I'll share my phone number. You can give that to anyone who needs help. But even just if you're a family and you've got loved ones that are struggling, give me a call. If you don't know what's happening or you're struggling to get the answers, just give me a call. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, awesome.
Great. Thank you, Tiegen.
Yeah, thank you.
Really appreciate it. All right, thanks, guys. We'll take a break for a bit, and we should be back at some stage. See ya.
You guys are going to have sleep soon. I'm just looking at you like...
Yeah.